so mysterious? Just sit down and hang with us. Why so mysterious?
This is Why So Mysterious, the podcast where we attempt to fill the gap between the bodies we have and the lack of knowledge around them,
We're sharing our experiences and answering our own questions
with some help along the way.
to destigmatize tricky, taboo topics.
The triple T's.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Why So Mysterious. I'm Raven,
And I'm Sara.
and today we are talking about PMS with a side of PMDD. And the reason that I would say that we've decided to do this topic is because until very recently, for me personally, I was in the camp of like, what is there even to know about PMS?
Same.
It's like literally we all fucking know what it is.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah.
Turns out
Turns out there's more to the story.
there's a lot more to the story.
Yeah.
And just like every other thing that has to do with like why
Hormones
don't
in the body.
Exactly. It's like we actually don't know anything about this.
No.
Not nearly enough.
No.
And it's super wrapped up in like misogyny and stigma.
So we're going to also have a splash of PME. I'm
Oh,
gonna
you're
go
doing
there.
PME too?
It's just a splash.
Excellent.
I'm going to go there. Just a splash of PME.
Spritz of PME.
We're going to go there. Okay. PMS. Premenstrual
Syndrome.
syndrome.
Yes.
I was about to say symptom, but it's syndrome,
Close.
right? Because
Yeah.
I was like, that was the only one I actually didn't put the definition of.
Don't
but
even
the-
know this is what it stands for.
Why do you even listen to this podcast?
Yeah, we're off to a great start. You tell us.
You tell us. That's really what we just want.
I mean, I didn't know what a goalie was in the
Here we
last
go
episode,
again.
so
wow. PMS, premenstrual syndrome,
confirmed.
confirmed via Google, is the combination of physical and emotional symptoms that many people get after ovulation and before they start their period.
Right.
So I would say pretty much everyone has some form of PMS. I don't think I've met a single person that menstruates that doesn't have some form of PMS. But this article was like, if you think you have PMS, go to your doctor and get diagnosed. And I was like, why?
Is PMS even like diagnosable? Because we're going to talk about this when I talk
Yeah.
about my thing. It's just like the criteria for PMS
Mm-hmm.
is extensive and pretty sexist. So
Oh, yeah, definitely. But I mean, like, technically, yes, a doctor, but literally a doctor would be like, yeah, you have PMS. Like, I don't think a doctor would be like, listen, Stacy, we have this new syndrome
I know
that
your
we have
mom,
discovered.
Malibu Barbie, brought you in
Yeah.
to answer all your questions. I couldn't help
I
it.
feel like a doctor would just be like, yeah, what you have is PMS.
They probably would just be like, get a heat pack, try raspberry
Yeah.
leaf tea. They probably tell you
I
to
don't
relax.
even think a doctor would say raspberry leaf tea. I think a doctor would literally just be like, yeah, you menstruate, you have PMS, get out of here, you're wasting my time. Like,
Bye.
hello, doctors, they suck.
Just making so many doctors so mad, but it's like
Whatever. They
have
can
yet-
start their own podcast and try to
I'm
change
sure they
the
have.
world.
I would
know?
appreciate that.
Yeah, that's what they can do. Okay, so researchers think that PMS happens in the days after ovulation because estrogen and progesterone levels begin to fall dramatically.
Right.
So this is like pretty standard. Nobody really knows what's going on with hormones. So
No.
they don't know what PMS is. They just know it's a thing that occurs in this window of time.
It also
And it correlates with this other thing that occurs in this window of time.
that we don't know a lot about.
No, we don't know really why.
But it also changes too. It's not
mhm.
a constant thing, just like your menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
It's a flexible
Totally.
being.
You can have worse PMS one month and then almost no PMS the next month.
Yeah, happens to
It
me
is
all the time.
the same here.
Mhm.
That's pretty much what we know.
That's it.
Scientifically, that is what we know.
Great.
We know that progesterone and estrogen drop
Yeah.
and that we have PMS.
Right. Got
I'm
it.
sure there are some more like in-depth
Well, I mean,
scientific-y things that we might know.
do we know like why we get like bloated, for instance? I'm sure we could figure out like sort of the causality behind
we
that.
can see like progesterone causes most of your digestive issues.
Okay.
Estrogen causes a lot of your mood issues.
Right.
So those kind of things, like we do know those things, but that's just like, that's looking at the phases. You can go back to any of our episodes where we've talked about the phases, because that's pretty much just what your luteal phase is. It's just a plummeting hormone roller coaster. Anyways, so PMS is typically 5 days up to 5 days before your period.
Okay.
I typically feel it more like 3 days before my period.
Me
I
too.
feel like that's about when I start to feel like irritable, like I feel a little bit sensitive to topics.
Some topics.
Yes. And then typically it lasts no more than 4 days after your period starts.
Right.
I would say it's typically maybe my first 2 days.
Yeah.
I'm like irritable, and then I pretty much start to level off because that's when your hormones start to go up again.
Yeah.
So we really like it when the hormones are up.
Yes.
We don't like it when they are down.
No. Is it the follicular phase? They call it the feel good phase.
Feel good.
Is it a feel good or is it just relief? I'm not sure.
I think it's just going back to what is maybe a normal
your
state.
baseline.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Not that we really have one,
Yeah,
but
that's true.
we have one for like 3 days. Okay, so there are 2 categories of symptoms. There are physical symptoms and emotional symptoms. Okay, these are, again, what I think pretty much anybody would describe their period to be, but they do count as PMS symptoms.
Okay.
So some people get swollen or tender breasts.
Yes.
I get like fucking massive boobs before my period.
Really?
Yeah, they actually grow like almost a full cup size.
What?
Yeah.
That's
From big
lot?
to even bigger.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
I only had
sucks.
sensitive boobs one time that I can remember because they were so sensitive.
They
and I
get
was
so
like,
heavy. Like they actually, like I feel like a weight difference. It's awful. I hate it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I
You
know.
really need that bra.
I know. Can you believe I lost my bra in a not even cool or sexy way? Just like a grandma. I have no idea where I put it. Probably because I just like took it off. I'm like, I hate this thing.
Out
and
the
I'm just
sleeve,
like, yeah, oh yeah,
threw
you know it. Like watching TV or something, and just I don't know where it is. Anyways, okay. So constipation or diarrhea. I always love when they tag these ones too as like the same symptom.
Yeah.
Constipation or diarrhea, those are very 2 different symptoms.
Yeah.
They can happen, like together, I guess, go from constipated to diarrhea directly.
Is period poops also considered both of those things too? I thought it was just constipation.
Constipation is more typical of your progesterone dropping.
Right.
But then diarrhea often is the onset of your cramps. So you start cramping and then you get diarrhea because basically your bowels are shaking from the inside.
Is that also when you get that like super sharp pain in
Urgency?
your asshole?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that the same thing?
I think so. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. It's pretty much like what's happening is your bowels are actually cramping from the
Right.
cervix cramping.
Right. And they're
Just
all in
send
the same
shockwaves
area.
to your butthole.
Right. Just say that a little cooler.
Your butthole. I'm just kidding.
You made it worse.
Oh, I did. Okay, again, these things I would also just lump in with your progesterone, bloating, gassiness. Then you've got cramping, headache. I love this one. Clumsiness.
Clumsiness?
It's true.
Oh, 100%.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although
You really
I
start dropping things around
just
that
like
then?
start throwing things at that point. Okay, and then a lower tolerance for noise and light, which is like, obviously headaches and stuff like those 2 are kind of connected.
Well, you're just sensitive.
Yeah, you're just hypersensitive.
Yeah.
So again, I would say these are pretty much like, I feel a lot of these pretty much like maybe the day before I start to feel like really more like intensely. I can feel the swollen breast almost a week before.
Really?
Yeah, no joke.
That's
I'm like, oh, it's usually my like, oh, send you a reminder, it's coming.
Is that typical of people who just have big boobs? Because I have small
no
boobs.
idea.
You have big boobs.
Yeah.
That's something that I very rarely experience. And I wonder if that is a symptom of just having more breast tissue.
It could be.
wonder.
There's more to swell.
Call in.
Yeah, please let us know. Okay, so now we get into the emotional or mental symptoms.
Yay.
Woohoo! Okay, classic irritability. This one I find really strikes me. It hits me hard.
Does it?
Oh yeah, I get
Okay.
really irritable like the night before. Like I can't remember what it was this time. Oh, we were driving home and I was like, we had like multiple stops and I was like, I'm not going in the store. Like, you can go in the store. And I was like, I'm just going to sit in the car. And I was like, man, I don't know why I'm so, like, irritable. Usually I'm, like, more like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll go. And then I literally started my period. I was like, oh, right. That's why. But yeah, no, I typically will realize I'm, like, right on the cusp of getting my period because I'm, like, irritable.
Really?
The night before. Very.
I get irritable, but like, you know me, I'm a pretty like irritable person because I'm just very reactionary.
Yes.
Like if you'll know what I'm
Yes.
feeling all the time.
Yeah.
But I find that I start taking everything really personally a couple
yes.
days before. It's
Yeah.
just like, and then I'll notice like, cause I'm tried to like let shit go and I'll be like, why did I take that on so hard?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's kind
Yeah,
of
like,
my, that's
Yeah.
my irritability.
Yep. General feelings of tiredness. Also, sleep problems.
Yeah.
Sleeping too much or too little. I just love these kind of ones. Just so ambiguous.
They're so vague.
They're
It's
so
like, could be a lot, could
Yeah,
be a
could
little,
be- yeah.
could be none.
Could be nothing.
Great.
Yeah. Appetite changes. We've all been there. Food cravings.
Oh man, that happened to me
Those kind of
so
things.
hard last week. I've been
Yeah?
off sugar for so long.
Oh.
And then I was like, I gotta crush a brownie. And I walked to Starbucks and I ate this brownie. And
That's why you ate the brownie.
yeah. And then the next day I was like, I haven't had ice cream in so long, but like I physically need it.
Oh,
It happens to
yeah.
me very rarely, but it's just like a violent, like
Yeah.
I must
I must.
eat this thing.
Yeah, I feel you. I bought a bag of O. Henry's last week.
A bag of O. Henry's?
Yeah, I like it when it's like little cut up pieces of chocolate bars. You know, when you buy
I
like the
was thinking
snack size.
Halloween candy, and I was like, where were you? Like fucking Costco?
Just buying it real early.
Why not?
I mean, true. Okay. This one I always think is really interesting because I'm like, I've never noticed it with myself, but I would love to know if it is or if, it's trouble with concentration or memory. I feel like I have this all the time. So
do.
I'm like, I wonder if it gets worse. I should try to track it. But I don't remember to. So
I would
it's
do
like
it.
a vicious cycle if I could remember, but I can't. So, anyways, okay. Tension, anxiety, depression, feelings of sadness, crying spells. I definitely get the crying. I feel like I don't really get hit with a lot of depression. I just fully will cry a lot easier to
Right.
things.
Yeah.
Mainly movies, dog videos, cat videos,
When I was
any video
like,
of an animal.
11, I had another auntie who told me one time that like she was like, oh, like just you wait, and then the next thing you know, you'll be watching a commercial for toilet paper and a kitten will show up and you'll just start crying. And I was like, what? And then I remember when it started happening, it didn't happen until I was like in my 20s, but
Yeah.
I would get like teary and I was like, oh,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
this is
and
weird.
You're like, ooh, this is a little much. Okay, mood swings and less interest in sex. Those are the classic mental. I don't know I guess less interested in sex is an emotional one.
I'm not going to say that that's exclusively emotional
Yeah,
because
I
if
feel
you're
like
physically
if you're bloated, constipated, you're cramping, you've got a headache, and you've got fucking tender boobs, who wants to have sex?
seriously,
So now I'm going to give you the advice the doctors don't give you when you go in because you have PMS.
and that is what they don't want you to know.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. We've talked about this so many times. Regular exercise
Yeah.
has nothing to do with your weight. just moving your body, walking, you know, going for a hike, stuff like that. Regular aerobic physical activity. So that's just like,
I thought you were going to say regular aerobics for a second.
we can do that. Do some aerobics. Choosing healthy foods most of the time.
Yes.
That's actually what they said, which I was like, nice. They know we can't do that all the time.
Can't do it.
Can't do it. Get enough sleep when you can. Find healthy ways to cope with stress. I like that one because I'm
Like what?
like try to meditate. Maybe I know.
I can't believe you just told me to meditate.
Listen, meditation.
It actually
could
fucking works
mean-
though.
I know. It's not easy to force yourself to do it. Breath work.
Yeah, I did a breath
You
work.
did?
That was very intense though.
Sometimes journaling. I like journaling personally.
I should
I'll just scribble some stuff in a book and never read it again, but it helps me.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like disclosure, and
Yeah.
disclosure is a very powerful form of therapy.
I
so.
feel no need to read it again until 10 years later, and then I cry and
I did that a little while ago, and it was like, oh, this is weird.
brutal. Just really sinks you back into that time, and you're like,
Sure
oh,
does.
that's not fun. But it is good and cathartic to do it.
That's true.
So finding healthy ways to cope with stress. I do think that is actually a really important one. I deal with a lot of stress in my life, and if I could not find ways to cope with it, I don't think I would continue doing it. This one, which I just like, and I'm looking at you straight dead in the eyes.
What is it?
Don't smoke.
I
Just
haven't
gonna
smoked
say.
in a while.
I know, I'm just kidding.
So, but no,
Just thought I
that's
Just thought
very
I
true.
would throw that out there.
There's really no good reason other than you like it. Period.
Yeah.
To smoke.
Yeah,
That's
and
why
a
I
lot of people
smoked.
use it for stress, so don't.
Oh yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
did. That's like my number one thing of starting smoking again. Is always there'll be
It's always a
vent.
stressful moment. Yeah.
Yep.
I know. I've been there. Okay. Some great vitamins you can add to your diet, which will help you. Calcium, vitamin B6. So calcium will help with cramping and bloating. Vitamin B6 is more for like memory, those kind of things.
Okay.
Depression, like depressive symptoms.
Okay.
Omega 3s, 6 and 9 also are good for that. And magnesium has been seen to help cramping.
Yeah,
well.
magnesium's really good for relaxing muscles.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So that is PMS in a nutshell.
all right.
Now we're going to do little splashes of looking into PMDD. So that is, let me find the definition.
Premenstrual dysphoric disorder.
Yeah, I had it copied and pasted in here and now it's gone. But that's okay.
Don't know why. I remember it.
Premenstrual dysphoric disorder.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Okay.
it's brand new to the DSM.
It is. Yeah, it has been added. So these ones are symptoms that arise premenstrually and then subside within a few days starting one's period and are not present in the week post period. So what we are looking at that point is we're looking at very, very similar symptoms of what we go through PMS. It can even be physical symptoms. It can be cramping and bloating.
Of course, yeah.
But more specifically, you're looking at feeling tired, depression, feelings of sadness, crying spells, tension, anxiety, those kind of things. Appetite changes as well, and sleep problems. If you have those things, but they are on a level that disrupts your life.
Yeah.
Like we've all had PMS where sure, it's not fun, but you still go to work. You still,
You're still functioning.
You still do your life. This is more like you are suddenly hit with a spell of depression.
Yeah.
Or just tiredness. You can't get up, whatever it is. But it only lasts for about up to 10 days before your period, but then it's gone pretty much like within the same window of regular PMS, like 3 to 4 days after your period starts.
Yeah.
And then for the rest of the month, you feel totally fine. They can still prescribe you antidepressants, so the SSRIs,
Yeah.
find this one.
I remember this.
Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. The only thing I put in here.
A cute little robot.
I did. They can prescribe that to you to help with the PMDD around your period. I don't know if I would assume you still take it all month.
I've heard that sometimes it is like a selective amount of time, but I don't know that it's always recommended to do that, only because the way that those work a lot of the time is they kind of need to adjust in your system. It's not great to be on and off them. However, I would hope that if a doctor is putting you on them, then they know how to tell you to take them effectively for whatever it is you're taking it for.
Yeah. That's kind of how you can look at PMDD, is if your PMS symptoms are quite heightened and are up to 10 days before your period.
Yeah.
And then you can look at that maybe 3 months in a row. And if that is the case, definitely go to your doctor, see what they can do for you. Sometimes it could just be changing your diet. It could be adding more of those vitamins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It could be sleep. It could be, there's possible other methods you could approach instead of going on antidepressants.
Yeah.
But they do say that does help. But I did want to touch on PME, which is premenstrual exacerbation, which we have talked about on the Gus show. But I do think it's really, really important to note the difference between PMDD and PME, just so if people hear this and they're like, oh, my depression's really heightened around my period, maybe I have PMDD. But what PME is when you already have
some kind of mood disorder.
Exactly. That's the word I was looking for. Some kind of mood disorder that affects you all month long. Yeah. But right around when you would typically be feeling PMS symptoms. Yeah. So up to 5 days before, 5 to 7. Or
potentially 10 days like with PMDD.
10 days like PMDD. Yeah. You feel an exacerbation of your already, it can be anxiety disorders, schizophrenia, major depressive orders, persistent depressive orders,
eating disorders,
alcoholism, like all these things.
And the other one too that I know is attention disorders. So ADD, ADHD also is in there. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. That wasn't in the article that I read. But that's really cool. Not really cool, but like cool.
Interesting.
To know. Interesting to know.
I wonder too if something. Probably. I mean, it is something going on in your head, but I would imagine that it is possible that if you have OCD, it would be the same thing as well. So
bipolar, like there's, we all know there's an array of mental, what'd you call them?
Disorders.
Did you call them mental disorders?
Well, mood disorders.
Mood disorders. Yeah. That's what I was looking for. And that PME is definitely just like an heightenedness of your already disorder. And then maybe knowing that you can go to your doctor, like, again, track it for a few months. If you see that, like, during your period, you're feeling, like, really heightened anxiety, all these things, maybe they can help you with
some therapy,
whatever it is. But that is very new. PME are your already symptoms of your mood disorder that are present throughout your entire cycle, but become more severe in the premenstrual phase. So typically when you would have PMS.
And that one is like they're working on trying to get it into the DSM. And I feel like PMDD, now that that's in there, this will get added eventually. But I know that it's not taken quite as seriously as
And
PMDD.
I know that they're also nervous that it's going to kind of muddy the waters a little bit if people with potentially PME think they have PMDD or vice versa. People with PMDD maybe think they have anxiety or depression throughout the whole month, but they're a little bit, not sure or whatever. But where I got this information, you've used this website as well, so I'm going to quote it again. It's iapmd.org, and they actually have a self-screening test that you can basically take to see if you have PMDD or PME.
Yeah, it's actually a really good resource, that website. There's a lot of really good information on there.
Yeah. So that's kind of PMS with a splash of PMDD and PME. All right. Tell
All right.
me the
Are you ready?
stories.
Okay.
Tell me
So,
the scandal.
It was pretty funny when I started, like when we decided we were going to talk about PMS.
Yeah.
I was like, how am I going to, like, what am I mean, I know that PMS was used as a defense when women would murder their husbands at some point. Am I going to talk about that? I was like, no, I don't really want to talk about that. That's like pretty gross. And then I just started doing all this Googling, and then it was just like, oh, of course. Hysteria.
Of course. Also, just had a spin-off podcast idea. True crime. Based off of PMS crimes.
There's probably quite a few. But yeah, that would be an interesting podcast. It would be really sad though, and filled with much misogyny.
It'd be terrible.
So this is basically kind of a history of hysteria, broad strokes, because it's a long fucking history, and the myth of the irrational female.
Woohoo!
So I got a lot of information for this from an article called Premenstrual Syndrome and the Myth of the Irrational Female by a woman named Sally King, and it was in a book called The Palgrave Handbook of Critical Menstruation Studies.
Wow.
It's long.
That sounds so dry and boring,
I was
but also interesting.
so fascinated.
It'd be like interesting for us.
Yes, and I was copying and pasting so much, and then I was like,
Yeah.
I really need to whittle this down. I was like I told you earlier today, I was like, my research has gone off the rails. I need to rein it in. So
Oh my god.
basically, we're going to start from the fucking beginning, which is ancient Greece.
Oh wow. Okay, buckle up.
We're starting from the
guys.
very beginning. So the word hysteria, back to this.
Ooh, yeah.
I don't know if you knew this. I did know this, but I don't know how common knowledge this is. Hysteria originates from the Greek word for uterus.
Of course it does.
Yeah, which is hystera.
Right.
Well-
That would make sense why it's a hysterectomy.
Yes. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, totally. So way back when, this is literally like the age of Hippocrates, who's the namesake of the Hippocratic Oath. So we're like the OG doctor.
Wow.
Well, kind of the OG doctor. I'm sure there were other people around, but so it's basically described as like behavior abnormalities in women. I am going to be just right off the bat, I am going to be using a lot of gendered language in this
Yeah.
because we're going so deep into history. Gender roles are very like cut and dry. So I apologize if that is irritating to anyone. I did my best.
We all know that we are a gender neutral space, but there are sometimes stories that
It's relevant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So basically all of these behavioral issues, they like really ran the gambit of just broad strokes criteria for having hysteria. So it included palpitations, fainting, restless anxiety, infertility, generally being sad, and abdominal pain. The oldest record of hysteria dates back to 1900 BC. That's pre-Jesus. When it
Jesus.
pre-Jesus.
I was going to say, wasn't he the first doctor? But I guess not, because we're talking
I thought he was
pre-Jesus here.
He was a carpenter.
Yeah, but he had those healing powers.
That's not a doctor. It's like a
Some would
medicine
say-
man. I don't know.
I'm just kidding.
He
I'm
had-
not saying Jesus was the first doctor.
He had the touch of
I just
God.
like jokes, you know. He had the touch of God.
I like
it.
jokes. Who doesn't? I'm trying to get you to watch Jesus Christ Superstar for ages.
I
and you won't
can't,
do it.
dude. No way. No way.
It's like really quick aside. When I did not grow up with religion. Anyone who listens to this podcast will probably get that by now. When I first moved out and I moved in with my really good friend Lindsay, and she grew up Catholic. I did not, but I love Catholic art. I find it really interesting. So I started covering our house in crosses. And then one day she came to me and she was like, listen, this shit doesn't mean anything to you, but I'm literally walking around with so much trauma around these things. They have to go. And I was like,
have to go.
oh, I didn't even think of that.
Nope.
So anyway,
That's why I can't watch Jesus Christ Superstar.
I get that, but
I tried.
You're missing out.
And then I immediately turned it off. I was like, oh no.
I need to watch it again.
flashbacks to my childhood.
The guy who played the Apostle Paul, we're getting so off topic in
Yeah,
this,
we
but
are.
fun fact, the guy who played the Apostle Paul in 1970's Jesus Christ Superstar movie is / was, he's still alive, a very famous porn star.
Beautiful.
And he was a famous porn star when he got cast to play the Apostle Paul.
Well, I could see Paul being a porn star.
Really? I don't know anything about
Paul
him.
was like the one that like was like, a woman is just a vessel that basically a man needs to, I don't know. He just said some shit about women that I don't like, and I don't like Paul.
Oh my God. Okay. Well,
I haven't read the Bible though, so I can't say much. I've just read like that one verse, and I was like, "Shut the Bible down."
Fuck you, Paul.
No thanks.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to pre-Jesus.
Yes.
So the oldest record of hysteria is 1900 BC,
Mm-hmm.
ancient Egypt. So now we're in Egypt.
Okay.
And it was thought that the cause of what was all of these things generally, also I should mention, hysteria in ancient Greece too and ancient Egypt was kind of known as like the widow's affliction, because it was like, oh,
They're
she's
sad.
yeah, like she's got all these other things going on because she's not getting any. I'm not lying. She's not getting any
Whoa.
because she's not married. Because we'll get to what the other cures for.
Seriously, they couldn't be like, well, maybe because her partner died.
Yeah, it
and
has
she's
nothing to do with
sad.
that. It's more like, well, okay,
You ain't getting laid, so you fucked up.
pretty much, yeah. And we're gonna circle back to that in a second. So, they thought that the uterus was detaching inside the body and floating around and just wreaking havoc on all your other organs. It really wanted to like move up. So it was like bumping into shit and yeah. And so that is where the wandering womb comes from.
Oh.
So that was the idea behind that, was like the reason that you're getting all these side effects is because your uterus is just
like stretching and like,
Yep, exactly. So the Egyptians treated wandering womb / hysteria by hanging women upside down so that their uterus would move up, because they thought it naturally wanted to move up. So if you were upside down, then it would go back to its rightful place. So
That doesn't make any sense.
I don't know. They were just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what stuck.
Clearly.
Just hang her upside down.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Okay.
You're not ready for this one though. So
No,
alternatively, you could also stay right side up, and they would put a bad smell in front of your face to scare the uterus into going back down, and then they would put a good smell near your genitals to coax it back in place.
Okay, did they want it to go up or did they want it to go down?
No, they wanted it to go down. They knew where it was supposed to be, but they thought it was going up.
But if they're upside down, it's just going to go up further.
No, if you're upside down and the uterus is floating up to like your chest, then it would get confused and think that up was up, but it's really
God.
your lower abdomen.
That doesn't make any sense.
I mean, why do you think that you can coax the uterus with a good smell?
It's
is all.
true. It's very, very true. Oh,
I was
man.
thinking
It's like
about-
they thought a cat was in there. Just like...
Pretty much. There's also a term for the uterus back from this time, which was the beast within the beast, or the animal within the animal.
Of course.
So basically, your uterus has like it's its own entity. It has a mind of its own.
Well, clearly.
Yeah. So that's...
It can get spooked and, be
would your-
coaxed.
like for me, like the bad smell would be like microwaved fish and then some jasmine next to my vagina.
Nice.
And that would get it right back
Do you
into
think
place.
they would have microwave fish back then?
No.
No.
Reheated fish. We've talked about this. Put it in a clay pot over a
Yeah.
hearth or something.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was the other weird thing for that. And then other more simple cures for wandering womb were lots of marital sex, because you're not supposed to be having
Right.
sex outside of marriage. Being pregnant often, because if your womb is
Oh.
heavy, it won't move.
Wow.
So
okay.
yeah,
Brilliant.
and orgasms, because if your
Great.
womb like shudders, it'll want to stay in place. It'll be happy.
It's kind of like this is what doctors think now. They constantly tell us to be pregnant.
That's why we're talking
tell
about
us
this.
to have orgasms because it makes your life so much better.
Really, ancient Egypt,
But only in marriage.
only marriage. Yeah,
Yeah.
make sure
Make
you're
sure.
that. So, but there's still the whole stigma too. Even like back then, it's like if you're going to like, because they had gynecologists back then. If you're going to the gynecologist too much, then you're a nympho. If you're not going enough, then you're not doing your duties as a wife. And it's like this whole fucked up. You literally can't win.
No.
Yeah. And if you have anything wrong with you and it has anything to do with your uterus, then you are a failure.
Wow.
That's the line going through this entire thing. And you know who's telling you you're a failure? I'm sure it happened with other people too, but mostly men.
Of course.
So
It's what they do. It's what they do best.
Yep. Okay, so this is sad. Between the 5th and 13th centuries, so now we're going
Okay.
way ahead.
Yeah, fast track.
Hysteria was believed to be caused by sin, pain, discomfort, anything related to your mood. It was all the result of demonic possession.
Nice.
Yep.
My
So
favorite topic.
mine too, actually. I do get really excited when witches make a cameo.
Oh, I like witches. I just don't like demonic possession. That actually terrifies me.
Okay.
Just, if I ever start being real moody, start being crampy.
It might be a demon.
It might be a demon.
Someone might have put a curse on you.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's a kind of interesting thing. I watched a video about this, and then I did some more research too, and it's like that actually sounds like endometriosis. So the criteria for this, like way back when, this is like pilgrim times, like the Crucible. It's like extreme abdominal pain, excessive bleeding, not wanting to have sex with your husband, which is pain during intercourse, very common with endometriosis. So if it couldn't be cured by the old timey doctor, it was definitely a demon, and then they would do an exorcism.
Oh my God.
And then if the exorcism didn't work, so like your symptoms came back, which they would because you have endometriosis.
It's also a cycle.
It's a cycle, yeah.
It just comes
on a
right
clock.
back.
So yeah, if it didn't work, then you were definitely a witch. And then you were prosecuted as a witch, and then you were tortured and executed.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah.
Okay.
And the criteria for that one is long too. Like I just listed the ones that I feel there's a correlation between endometriosis, but it's not just that. It's also behavioral changes, like things like that. I don't know. There's probably like a butt ton of farm diseases happening back then. And, just like the train agrees with me.
Did men never change their behavior ever?
Not in Puritan society. They thought everything they were doing was right. They were probably fucking sheep too. Who knows what they were bringing home to their wives? Anyway.
Seriously. Gross.
Okay. Now we're in the 17th century.
Okay, we're creeping up.
Symptoms associated with the menstrual cycles started to be seen as emotional rather than physical in this time. There was an English physician. His name was Thomas Sydenham. And he was really influential in reclassifying hysteria from a gynecological condition to a female prevalent nervous condition. Yes, which was caused by weaker constitution and subsequent emotional instability. So it was basically like women are frail, therefore, they're like, like I don't know, how do I describe that for a listener? They're basically
just
like
weak.
They're just weak. Yeah.
That's literally what Paul said about us too.
Oh, well.
He said, that was it. We were like the weaker vessel.
Yes. The weaker sex
bullshit.
gets...
We got endometriosis, man.
Childbirth? You heard of childbirth? Fuck you.
All the PMS
weaker.
shit,
you know what happens if you grab a man by the balls just a little bit?
Just a little bit.
Who's the weaker?
Exactly.
Anyway.
Not to,
Don't do that.
We just want gender equality.
We're just really frustrated. So anyway, so it was weaker constitution, emotional instability.
Yeah.
Like for him, it was like, of course. Like no wonder. This is totally a thing. But because he was a physician, gender discrimination was just like furthered along as being like quote unquote scientifically justifiable.
Of course.
Which it still is. So.
Those men always helping us out.
Oh yeah, they know what we need. So now we're in the mid to late 1800s.
Okay.
It stayed the emotional thing,
of course.
The weaker sex this entire time.
Yeah.
But now we have psychoanalysis.
Okay.
Now we have Freud.
Ooh, okay.
Fuck Freud, by the way.
Oh, okay.
I just want to say
I don't know anything about Freud.
Don't
to be totally honest.
fucking bother. Just I want to take like a little moment to say, like, if you're in a hetero relationship and you are a woman and your boyfriend is into Freud,
question that.
Be careful. I'm just saying, if he is into Freud and Nietzsche, and then he's moved on to some other ones, just like here's.
Please tell us why.
Because with Freud, it's just like I call him the master gaslighter.
Ooh.
And I'm not saying that psychoanalysis doesn't help people. Like it probably did back then.
Yeah.
It was totally new. It was totally revolutionary. And I know it helps people now.
Yeah.
But there are some things that you can't be talked out of experiencing. So with hysteria and PMS,
Yeah.
endometriosis, infertility, you can't be talked out of those things. So now you're just
No.
being
Right.
gaslit.
Yes.
None of this is real.
They're not like something that they don't like evolve into PMS. Like PMS is like
No.
a natural bodily. I don't want to call it a function. It's a symptom of a function.
It's part of a cycle.
Yeah.
So there's just some
you can't be
things-
talked out of it.
Yeah, so Freud wrote a book about hysteria in the mid 1800s with a doctor. I think his name was like Joseph Broer or something like that. So it's like once Freud's into something, we're all into it. Anyway, I get all heated when I talk about Freud.
Clearly, I didn't know that's about Freud.
Okay,
But that doesn't
here's another
surprise
quick
me.
thing about Freud before we move on to the rest of it. So basically, like Freud's solution to everything is have more sex. We're a repressed nation, which is probably very true in the mid 1800s. I'm not gonna say it wasn't, but his thing was just like everyone has like these immature libidos and they need to be matured. And the only way that you do that is by like releasing your inhibitions, by going to therapy and working through your traumas. Okay, that's fine. I got it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't just the whole like boxing it in as being an immature libido. Like here's another thing. He said that a clitoral orgasm was immature and like only a
Really?
like a kind of broken woman would only be able to come with a clitoris.
Are you serious?
And she was only mature if she was able to have I don't know an orgasm vaginally.
Yeah, like through penetration.
Exactly. Otherwise, she's just kind
immature.
of like she's immature. Yeah.
Wow.
Which,
I think
like,
a lot
whatever.
of clitoris owners out there would.
It's
like
just like the
to,
clitoris does not get enough like due. It is a very incredible thing, and
It's a very
I'm just
incredible
frustrated.
thing.
Also, he smoked cigars until he died. He had cancer for years. He even had a piece of his jaw removed from his mouth cancer.
Ew.
Refused to quit smoking. Who is immature? I ask you.
I ask you.
Anyway,
Seriously.
so that's the end of my
Freud.
Freud rant. I have more
All
to say,
right.
but I feel like I'll trip over my words. Anyway,
It's okay.
so yeah, the other thing about psychoanalysis getting on the scene and like people getting this sort of treatment is now hysteria is almost exclusively classified as being an affliction of the middle to upper class white woman, because those are the people who are receiving treatment through psychoanalysis. Those are the
Right.
people who are like, you know, quote unquote more educated.
Yeah.
They're interested in those things.
I'm paying for psychoanalysis.
Yes, and they're also going to dinner parties and hearing about it at the table and whatnot.
Right.
It's all the rage.
Oh, of course.
So there was a book in 1855 called The Diseases of Woman by Dr. Frederick Hollick. And so in 1855, from this book, this is how we're describing women with hysteria.
Okay.
Women disposed to hysteria are generally capricious in their character and often whimsical in their conduct. So basically that's like kind of impulsive, no real regard for consequence, and just happy-go-lucky, like water off a duck's back. Some are exceedingly excitable and impatient, others obstinate or frivolous. The slightest thing may make them laugh or cry and exhibit traits which ordinarily they are not supposed to possess. So that last part is interesting too.
By what definition are we not supposed to have certain traits?
This guy,
This
Dr.
guy.
Hollick.
He decides
but
what we're supposed
also,
to be like.
Like the middle of this too is, and this is the thing about like, you know, a lot of these kinds of symptoms of like PMS and stuff like that, and even just like the sleep thing, it's like, you know, you might cry or you might laugh.
Yeah.
If you do either of those things too much or not enough, you probably have something's probably wrong with you.
Yeah. Also, I'd like to note that if women or just, you know, people with uteruses of the time were acting carefree and maybe a little bit odd or whatever, maybe it's because they had no say over their lives.
Well, let's talk about it. Okay, so it should be noted that in 1855, around the time that this book was being written, is when the suffrage movement started picking up.
Right.
So that's when women started
course,
demanding
yeah.
the right to vote.
Oh, God.
Yep. So
God forbid they have traits that are not defined by this doctor as being appropriate.
yeah. So it's like inappropriate for you to speak up for equality.
Yeah.
And, you know, like any of the, God forbid you don't want to have sex with your husband for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You know, those are characteristics you're not supposed to possess. You're supposed to be a good girl.
Right.
So the parallel line of the suffrage movement is interesting here. So moving right along, premenstrual symptoms were formally described in 1931 by a gynecologist named Robert T. Frank, and he dubbed it premenstrual tension. So it's still very much kind of a psychological, psychosomatic, I would say, because it's holding tension in your body. And it's nervousness. So the symptoms, again, though, they're very broad and wide-ranging, and they're almost identical to those that we've been using for hysteria up until this point. So it's now, like, definitely menstrual related, but it's still not completely correct.
Yeah.
So in this paper where Dr. Frank first coins the term PMT, he talks about the physical symptoms for sure, but he spends like a really gross amount of time talking about what he thought to be the undesirable psychological state of the women in his study. So he included symptom descriptions that were like more value judgments on what was a quote unquote improper feminine behavior.
Right.
So there's 3 descriptors that these are in a scientific findings paper. So some of the descriptors that he was finding, you know, these people are suffering from PMT was these are God, I'm just talking in circles because I'm so irritated. Okay. Husband to be pitied, impossible to live with, and my favorite, unbearable shrew.
Oh, of course.
Unbearable shrew.
Always a shrew.
So I was like, that's me.
Oh my gosh, shut up.
So then, like you were just saying about not having any autonomy, not having any say, and then like I just told you about suffrage, this paper was written in 1931. What was happening in the 1930s? The fucking Great Depression.
Oh.
So this paper was written at the same time that women were being kind of guilted into leaving the workforce because men needed jobs.
Yeah.
So anyone who had like a paycheck, it meant you were taking a job away from a man who really needed one because there weren't any. Then the other thing that's happening at the same time in the 1930s is estrogen is discovered. Yes, which is great.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, this was kind of used as further proof that menstruators were just like quote unquote naturally susceptible to irrational behaviors, and they were pathologically emotional, and they had a reduced capacity for reason in their biology.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, get out, go back home. Like don't work at the movie theater. Don't wait. Like,
no work for you.
No work for you. You can't. It's dangerous.
Oh,
you're irrational.
So dangerous.
So yeah, that's happening all at the same time that this is going on.
Wow.
Now we're just going to kind of get into women's work a little bit. So hormones have been used against us a lot.
This is a PSA.
This is a PSA.
Hormones have been used against us.
We are
Big
hormonal
surprise.
beings. That's not a secret.
No.
But we also like we can live and have hormones.
Yes, we can manage our lives quite
Exactly.
efficiently.
So, yes, in the 1930s, when Dr. Frank wrote that paper, he was very much arguing in the paper that women could not work because of their hormones. They would make them irrational.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They would make them
So
emotional.
that was the point of his article.
That was kind of the
Or
point.
whatever
Well, I
he
guess
was
the point
writing.
was to like classify PMT,
Right.
But then it was
But
also
like, oh God, don't let them in the workforce because
exactly.
Way
And I
too
mean,
dangerous.
what do you expect from some guy who's calling someone an unbearable shrew in a scientific article? So
I roll.
seriously, so that is a thing. Then in World War II happens.
Yeah.
and suddenly all the men are gone. And now they have to convince, well,
Now they need the women back.
well, you need a workforce.
Oh my God.
Somebody's got to fucking do this shit. And so,
What about the periods, though?
okay, well, there were numerous studies in the early 1940s that found PMT actually didn't really affect women that much.
Really?
Seriously, it's
Is it
actually
kind
not a
of
big
like
deal.
the bears?
Yeah,
Have we done that on the podcast?
No, we haven't done it on the
No.
podcast. I feel like we should revisit it though. But
Oh,
basically,
dude.
bears are not attracted to period blood.
No.
That's
Turns out we can do lots of things in life and periods are not affecting it.
you can have periods at the same time
Yeah.
as your Rosie the riveting all the way to victory.
Exactly. Getting a full-time job with a period.
Exactly. So yeah, they published this paper because they did need to convince a lot of women to go into work because a lot of them had been used to not working, and then it was a whole thing where it's like you're helping the war effort.
Yeah.
Like it's okay. This is how you can show up for your country. And then we went to work.
Yeah.
And that was our patriotism.
Yeah.
And then of course we wanted to keep these jobs.
Of course.
And then
'Cause
all
you know
these-
what? Humans also like to do stuff.
They do. And you know what else?
Really like to do
Everybody likes to have their own money,
stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
especially if you don't know what it's like.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, well, you don't want to go back in the kitchen.
No.
So,
Unless you're getting paid to work in a kitchen.
yeah, then it's different. Or if you really want to be there,
Of course. That's also totally fine.
then the war is over. Now you got all these men coming home, and again, they need jobs.
Yeah.
Then in order to have, because they did have an issue getting women out of the workforce when the war was over.
Yeah.
And so they did more papers about how PMT actually did affect their
Oh my God. I want to
hormones.
literally hit my head on a wall right now.
Yeah.
It's
so
like just that is cyclical. Like the fact that it's
Whenever
like,
it suits you.
whenever it suits you. Oh, now our hormones are so dangerous for the workforce.
yeah, it's whenever it's convenient to you. So there was a paper where this quote was literally, women are indeed disabled by their hormones. In conclusion.
In conclusion, sorry, that was just a blip during the war.
Yeah, it's just like, tensions were running
Yeah.
high. We were all doing what we needed
Oh
to do.
my God.
Okay, so now we're just as a quick aside, PMS was finally named in the 1950s when women were in fact back in the kitchen. So now we cut to today, and the whole point of this thing, it's long, I know, and
It's long, but it's been a
It's-
nice in-depth history of
it certainly is a
PMS
history.
and hysteria.
I was
Hysteria.
a little worried that it wasn't going to be like PMS heavy enough, but I think the point of this whole thing is that basically all of these symptoms
Yeah.
are turned on us on the regular.
Yep.
And gaslighting is
100%. I mean,
you know,
who hasn't heard, oh, are you on your period?
Exactly.
Whenever we are pissed off
Yeah.
or upset, assertive,
Yeah.
so many things like it. And that's why I think it's really good to know what the hell PMS is,
Yeah.
or at least what we know about it.
yeah.
And so that you can turn to those assholes and be like, no, I'm not PMSing right now.
Yeah.
I am in my follicular phase and I am real fucking happy.
Show the receipts. Absolutely. So kind of the point of that whole thing too was like, I don't want to take away from anyone who is going through PMDD or PME or anyone who does just have more, emotional connections with their PMS rather than physical. But the reality is, and looking through all of this and thinking about the centuries-old gaslighting phenomenon, is that PMS symptoms are actually more predominantly physical than they are emotional. And that's really been erased. And so if you Google PMS today,
That's actually really true. That's a good observation.
yeah, it's, well,
Because it's like when people say are you on your period? Are you like PMSing? It's because you're moody. It's not.
always, yeah.
Oh, you're so bloated. Are you PMSing?
Yeah. Oh, you're so hungry, which
Yeah.
you shouldn't tell someone anyway
No.
because that's dangerous.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always that. And like we're trained
That's
to do
true.
that from a really young age. Like before I, learned more about the menstrual cycle in general, I even was like, oh, like I'm being a huge bitch. I must be getting my period
Yeah,
soon.
that's
That was-
actually such a good point.
Mhm.
I've definitely fallen for that. Like, been like, oh, like, you know, I'm like crying extra or whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just cry. You know,
Well,
sometimes
that's the
nothing
thing
to
is
do with
like
my
your
PMS.
feelings are also valid.
valid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they might be charged by hormones, but it doesn't mean that they're not real. Like I've had
Yeah,
moments
exactly.
where I've been really angry when I was on my period and maybe I said something that I wouldn't normally say
Yeah.
in the heat of a moment,
Yeah.
but it was something that was already there.
It's not like you're being totally outlandish or like you're just like coming
I'm not
up-
making shit up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, you're just, like you said, you're more charged, maybe because you're going through PMS, but it doesn't disregard the feelings that are actually there.
Yeah, it's just like in the background that Twisted Sister song is playing in my head, like, we're not gonna take it. It's like, no, we ain't gonna take it. So, yeah, anyway.
That's perfect.
So, that's kind of what I wanted to do with the whole through line through this. So, if you Google PMS symptoms today, which I'm sure you did today, and I did the other day, the very first thing that comes up is a list of symptoms. And the top symptoms are mood swings, feeling upset, anxious or irritable, and tiredness.
So interesting.
They start all with more psychological, like symptoms rather
Yeah.
than physical. And so it's also like there have been
That's
lots
such
of
a good point.
yeah, there have been lots of population studies that do say like globally, unless you are someone who is suffering with like PMDD
Yeah.
or something like that, the majority is physical symptoms, and then your
Yes.
emotional symptoms are secondary.
Yeah.
And then I would also like to say, who among us who is bloated and uncomfortable is not a little bit irritable because of that?
Precisely.
I'm very much affected by how my physical body is doing.
Of course you are.
It affects your mental health. Anyone who
Yeah.
lives with a chronic pain will tell you that.
Precisely.
So,
Wow. That's actually so interesting. And when I was reading one of the articles that I was reading too, was, I think it was WebMD. And the first thing they listed was physical stuff. And I thought to myself, I wouldn't, and I literally thought, I wouldn't have categorized, I wouldn't have thought to think these were PMS symptoms. Because in my mind, PMS symptoms were more emotional, mental symptoms.
absolutely. And that
Yeah.
is a tiny bit of internalized misogyny and the myth of the
Yes, it
irrational
is.
female, because that's what we're all thinking.
That's what we're all thinking.
Yeah, we're all
Holy
like
fuck.
100%. So, also,
We are the problem.
well, I mean,
Not
like,
anymore because of this podcast.
until you know better.
Yeah.
That's the thing, and it
Wow,
totally
that's
makes
so
sense.
interesting.
Yeah. So this is another thing that I didn't really know, but the list of PMS symptoms is over 200 long. There
that's
is
a
no
lot.
determined short list. So because of this, literally every physical, psychological, or emotional state becomes a potential symptom.
Of course it does.
And that means like we don't really know what
Yeah.
the fuck we're doing.
Which
when it
is
comes to
also why
PMS.
maybe when you go to the doctor just says, well, you just have PMS. But maybe you don't.
Maybe you don't.
Maybe you actually have irritable bowel syndrome.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
or you have any other of the numerous different things that affect you physically or mentally.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then you're just being written off for having PMS because
Yeah.
there's 200 things that
There's 200 and no determined
PMS.
short list. So there's no place that you can go and find like the top things because there
things.
aren't really, I mean, there's lots of things that are common, but there isn't really like a top 5. And
Yeah.
the symptoms are still like, honestly, like inexcusably gendered and exaggerated.
Yeah.
So nagging is on there, acting spiteful is on there, and loss of confidence is on
Are you
there.
serious?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So, like this is the list now. This is a,
Wow.
What is
That
it?
is
Weird.
literally mind blowing.
Yeah. So it's like all kind of value judgments that are all very similar to that guy, Dr.
I
Frank.
can't believe nagging's on there.
Nagging is fucking on there, and that is a very like gendered and perceived like negative feminine trait.
Yeah. It
Fuck you.
100% is.
Maybe you're not listening.
Yeah. Precisely. And maybe that's why we're irritated.
Yeah, probably. fuck, man. Okay, so one tool that is really valuable for like figuring out how we can get a better like short list, things like that, is we should all be tracking our periods.
100% tracking symptoms.
But the thing is,
Everything.
in order to do it effectively for data for PMS, you need to be tracking everything every day. So you need to be tracking all your physical and all your mental,
Yes.
emotional, every single day.
Interesting.
Which lots of period experts, like I know Victoria Alexander, who we had on in episode 3, they're a really big proponent of doing that every
Tracking
day.
every day.
I feel like I should be doing that every day.
We should be doing that every day.
But I
It
just
actually
finished my
probably
period and I
good
didn't
for
even.
you to do it.
Yeah.
To like even just see where your mental's at throughout the month.
Well, it'd be
or where your
interesting-
bloating is at. When are you more bloated? What's maybe causing it?
And after a couple months, like, are there trends?
Yeah.
Can you see the trends?
Exactly.
So that's really interesting. Research shows that PMS experiences are highly susceptible to what's called the priming effect.
Okay.
So any prior knowledge that you have of PMS beforehand is going to affect how you're thinking about PMS as a whole,
Right,
whether
of
or not
course.
you're the one experiencing it, which we just
did that.
that's a full like, real life example.
Yep.
So basically, it's a culture-bound phenomenon is what they called it in this paper that I read for this. So basically, it's caught up in a specific set of cultural beliefs rather than tangible medical truths.
Wow.
And there is no universal recognized like list of symptoms also because of that, because of this priming effect.
Wow.
So there was a study that I read that was part of this paper that was like, women in Hong Kong, they were complaining way more of physical things like feeling cold, even like they're feeling cold, they feel bloated, more physical. And then at the same time, they did the same study in the US, and way more in the US, women were complaining of mood and mood associated symptoms. And I do kind of feel like you can read into that culturally, and it makes sense.
100%, yeah.
So you'll ignore some symptoms too based on what you think is a PMS symptom.
Yeah.
Or what you think isn't.
Isn't.
So,
Interesting.
in closing,
Okay.
I wanted to just like quote this paragraph from the Premenstrual Syndrome and the Myth of the Irrational Female paper that I read. It says, explicitly recognizing and countering the myth of the irrational female and its influence on the way in which PMS is clinically described and managed is an important step toward better supporting those who do experience cyclical symptoms without unintentionally implying that the menstrual cycle itself is a form of illness or any sort of biological justification for gender inequality.
Yes.
And that's a really good point too, because the more that we just like lump all these symptoms together and it's like, you're crazy, your PMS is
crazy.
wild, you're doing everyone who does experience cyclical symptoms a disservice. You're lumping them in with all of us being nuts.
Yep. Wow. And just further, making the gap between the genders,
Absolutely.
like, so much harder to bring together and find equality.
Yeah, and like actually like solutions for people who are really suffering when it comes to their menstrual cycle. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
They said almost up to 10% of people suffer with PMDD.
Yeah.
Just a lot.
Which makes sense. And I fucking wish that I could say this word, but when I interviewed Sara, period queen, her condition, which is actually a combination of two conditions put together.
Right.
I can't say the word. I'm so sorry. Basically,
okay.
It's like excessive bleeding and I can't even remember. But basically, it's like something that I had never heard of until I talked to her. 10 to 30% of the population.
Wild.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. And it's like, why can't we figure out what the baseline is here?
This is why we have this podcast. This is literally why we have this podcast. So people know the history of PMS. They know what to look for when they're talking about their own PMS. They know how to talk about their PMS so that they're not bringing other people down, bringing themselves down.
Yeah, are you gaslighting yourself?
Are you gaslighting yourself? Yeah. Are you saying, oh, I'm a total bitch on my period? No, you're not.
No.
You're not. Maybe you're just a bitch in life.
Maybe you're, and all the power
and
to you.
that's totally fine. Be a bitch all month long.
Sure.
You know.
Like, you don't need to lump it into this
No.
thing that, like, we all experience, because that is how you start to, like, generalize things.
Yeah.
That's how, like, assumptions start to get made. And there's just too much of that going on when it comes to menstruation without enough actual, like, concrete evidence about how this shit works.
Precisely. They actually don't know how PMS works, so let's not add more shit to the fire here. Like, let's just at least figure out. Let's move towards figuring out what PMS is and how it works, and then maybe we can cut that 200 list down. You know,
Get that short list going.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And, like, who knew PMS is so interesting?
I know, me neither.
It's
I thought this
wild.
was going to be like a short little episode, but
So did I. But it's not.
It's not, and I like it.
Also, the vibrator was created to treat hysteria.
Yes,
and
I
they
knew
made a
that.
movie about it, which I just put on hold at the library, about the guy who made the library. He made it because, this is gross, but because orgasms were like a way to relieve hysteria. Of
course they were.
Doctors would manually bring patients to orgasm.
God, that
Quote
literally,
unquote
sends
consensually, but
vomit
it's
throughout my body.
It's not a good scene, so they
No,
made a movie.
It's disgusting. The things that doctors did to uterus owning bodies are just horrible.
But
And
in a
we know-
weird twist,
Yeah.
they made a romantic comedy about the guy
Oh my
who
god,
made
of course they did.
the vibrator, and I put it on hold because I'm
Oh my God.
curious.
You have to watch it.
Basically, he gave himself carpal tunnel,
Oh my god.
and that's why he made the vibrator. So I'll let you know how that movie is.
Okay.
It's from the 90s.
Eye rolls.
I can't remember who's in it, but there's
nice.
like legit Hollywood stars in this movie.
Seriously?
Yes.
Wow. I'm sure they made him out to be like a rock star.
Probably.
It's
Yeah.
disgusting.
It's like when they never knew what they were missing.
Oh my gosh.
It's going to be fun.
Literally makes me want to throw up.
Pretty gross.
Yeah.
Pretty gross.
It's really gross.
So,
Doctors suck. I'll just say that again.
Yes.
Say it at the top of the episode. say it
always
at the end.
and forever. All right, well, that's
Okay.
it.
We're
I
done.
hope you learned something. I learned a lot.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And I laughed. I didn't cry, but I was upset.
Yeah. Like always.
You'll have to excuse me about my Freud rant. I feel a little weird about that, but
You
I
know
have
what? I'm down for it.
I have a
I didn't know-
history with the...
I'm like, I've never learned about Freud. I just know it's like a thing people
You
talk
don't
about.
need to.
And now I'm like, you know what? He sounds like he sucks.
He does. And I,
So,
I have
liked your PSA warning of if your boyfriend likes Freud.
He likes Freud if he's
Dump
reading
him.
Nietzsche, if he's into what's the other guy who like Derrida. Look, I have a
avoid
history with pseudo intellectuals, and I'm looking to break that pattern. So
I
learn from my
like
mistakes.
it. Yes. Yes, Miss Raven.
I mean,
Pseudo intellectuals.
yeah.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. We're breaking that pattern right there.
The more you know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's awesome. Great
All right.
episode.
yeah,
Fucking
this is
loved
fun.
it. This is really fun.
Thank you for listening, and don't gaslight yourself.
No, don't. Just be a bitch all month long.
Yeah,
please.
why not? Fuck
Do
it.
it.
I do
All right.
it all the time.
All the time. I can attest to that. She's a total bitch. Just kidding. I'm her boss.
All right, thank you for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Why So Mysterious is hosted by Sara Jonsdottir and Raven McLean. Audio is produced and edited by Sonia Inke. Original music is by Malcolm Holt and Alexis Young.
Check out our website, whysomysterious.com, for more information about this episode and other episodes. You can also email us with questions or topics you'd like to hear us cover on the show at whysomysteriousPod@gmail.com.
Follow us on Instagram at Why So Mysterious Pod for updates, fun facts, and general outrage. If you're an audio listener, but you'd rather be a voyeur, check us out on YouTube.
If you like the show, tell your friends, and don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.
Until next time.